Howdy, folks, and welcome to the show, the Injured Workers Show, where we give you the skinny, the lowdown, and the 5-0, what's happening to injured workers in America, and the needed federal solutions to stopping the war on us by state law. So yeah, that's the show. Tonight's topic is going to be how state single-payer plans like whole Washington have killed our injured workers' federal human rights issue now for over 5 years. So we're just going to jump right into it tonight, and I'm going to share a couple videos with you, and I'm going to share you a little history of how I've tried to seek minimum federal standards for injured workers to put them on the Democrats' table here in Washington State so that we could fight for workers across this nation. Yet I have been blocked by the whole Washington advocates and Bernie-crats, our revolution folks, from calling out or entrenched Democrats like Rick Larson. U.S. Representative Rick Larson. So let's jump right into it here. See if I can get switched over here. And I think this should work. There we go. Bear with me for a second. And I will try and make that small for a second. And I think we're switched over. Let me check one more time. I do believe, yeah, I'm switched over. So what we're going to do, first off, in 2015, after I've been already fighting for 4 years or so on workers' comp, I got hurt in 2011. Senator Sanders came out with a letter and told us, and Tom Perez and Senator Patty Murray all come out and told us we needed some minimum federal standards in 2015 to stop this class war in America's injured workers. So at the same time in 2015, I had made this video calling my Democrats out here in Washington and across America for not helping us. So I'll share a little bit of this video and how Senator Mark Aurelius, who seems to be a big backer of whole Washington, had to tell us, as we were telling him folks are being hurt and harmed by our broken state work comp systems, he seemed to tell us everything is fine. So let's listen to it for a moment, and for my conservative friends, bear with us. I know we're having to listen to some liberal folks here, but if you can stomach through it long enough, you might learn something and learn that both parties seem to be at war on our injured workers as we try to fight for our minimum federal standards. We need on every lawmaker's table in America today. So just bear with us, and you'll learn something about a war on injured workers and how some of us have been seeking help now for over 5 years from Democrats who should help us but have refused to.
Trickle-down economics is bunk, and always was.
Hi, my name is Mark Aurelius. I'm a state representative from the 21st District. This is today's Washington Whiteboard. We're talking about injured workers today and what our state does to get them back to work. We do this predominantly through our workers' compensation system, an employee and employer-funded insurance program here in Washington State. Some folks tell us that the workers' comp system is broken, it doesn't do its job. I want to take a look at the facts. So this pie chart is all the folks that file workers' compensation claims in Washington. Of all those folks that file claims, 72% get treatment and get back to work without missing a single day of work. Pretty good system when almost 3/4 of people are getting right back to work. The next group, 9%, miss less than 14 days of work. So they're back to work within 2 weeks. The next group miss less than 28 days of work. This is about 14%. So when you add all this up, over 90% of our workers that file claims either are back to work right away or are back to work within 28 days. A pretty good system. So who's left? About 5% of people have long-term claims, and of that 5%, 1.5% are permanently disabled. This is an expensive group to work with, but a very, very small number of the claims that are filed. 98.5% of people in our state that file a claim get back to work. How does this stack up with other states? Washington's rates for workers' compensation are better than 38 states. We have one of the lowest rates for workers' compensation claims across the country. That has helped us get a number 10 ranking for our business climate, a number 7 ranking for job creation among the states, and number 5 for one of the best places to do business in the United States. We've got a system that gets people back to work and takes care of them when they're injured. We have a competitive business climate and low rates. I'd say our system is working. This is today's Washington Whiteboard.
So I'm going to stop right there for a moment. Mr. Senator, Washington State Senator Marco Elias, who you just heard from, it's important to note that he fought for the LGBT rights folks here in our community, and kudos to him for that. But he also fought for it on a national level. But when I want him to stand up for injured workers on a national level, that some of them may even include LGBT people and people from every walk of life, he refuses to want to stand up and fight for our minimum federal standards that we need for the injured workers to stop this race to the bottom, that this pitting each state against each other for a race for lower work comp rates is a race to the bottom for labor. And I will let you learn about that here. And I told this about to Marco back then, and he didn't want to help. So I'm going to move on to here where we learn at the very same time we had PBS or Newsy and a couple other news outlets tell us this. And so I'm going to take a couple minutes and learn and hear what we were told in 2015. We were told what was wrong. We were told what we need as a solution. Yet everybody went silent on our issue after 2015, after Trump was elected for some reason. And I have never figured out why. But during that whole time, they've all pushed whole Washington and told us their whole Washington state single payer initiative was more important than my injured workers federal issue. So let's listen to what's happening to injured workers. And we've been told this, and our stories are being told right here. These are our stories. This is the solution if you take time to listen.
Being both on the job and healthy may be as vital as ever, as a new investigation shows workers' compensation benefits nationwide have been cut. The moves benefit employers and insurance companies that are supposed to cover hurt workers. ProPublica and NPR conducted the joint investigation. The outlets published identical articles Wednesday morning, along with a state-by-state breakdown profiling the cuts over the past 13 years. Here are some of the investigation's key findings. Since 2003, lawmakers in 33 states have passed new laws reducing workers' comp benefits or making them tougher for employees to access. Each state varies significantly on how much you can receive, so where you get hurt matters. Many states cut off benefits after an arbitrary time limit instead of when the worker is recovered, and employers and insurance companies now have more control over medical decisions. The report was especially critical of states like Florida, which has reduced workers' comp benefits by 65% over the past 2 decades. In California, insurers can use the opinions of doctors who never actually saw a patient to reopen old cases and deny medical care. Independent medical reviewers in that state denied the recommendation of workers' doctors in 91% of cases.
Yeah, everyone thinks that workers' comp is so expensive, but in fact, we looked at the numbers and we found that employers are actually paying the lowest cost for workers' compensation insurance since the 1970s. And insurers are doing fairly well, too. In 2013, they had an 18% profit, their best year since the 1990s.
In another case highlighted Wednesday morning, ProPublica and NPR pointed out a worker who loses an arm on the job in Alabama is only entitled to a maximum of $48,000 in compensation. Just across the border in Georgia, a worker could get almost $700,000 more over his or her lifetime. ProPublica and NPR say the investigation took up much of the last year for the outlet's 2 reporters, Michael Grable and Howard Burkus. For Newsy, I'm Cliff Judy.
So you see there, folks, we were told the problem and the solution. And I would go into this one, but I won't go into that one. But we'll come on to the next one here. As I was calling these people out and asking for help, I was selling out to all these people who were running whole Washington, our Bernie Kretz, Tyler Vega, Jason Call for Congress, all my local Democrats basically, and we've got a page at Washington State, Democrats are in complete control, and we control the whole nation now, so the fact that we can't get this issue on the table is kind of ridiculous at this point. As I was calling out people in 2015, like Tom Harden, to get honest about this, as he writes books on inequality, but yet can't talk about a war on injured workers or the need for minimum federal standards, as he's too busy helping sell state single-payer initiatives rather than standing up and fighting for us injured workers needing some minimum federal standards, along with our fight for Medicare for all.
And it's Anything Goes Friday. Darren in Everett, Washington, watching us on Facebook Live. Hey, Darren, what's up?
Hey, I want to talk about a war on injured workers and how it's adding to homelessness and inequality here in America. That back in 2015, OSHA and Senator Sanders and NPR all told us, and the U.S. Department of Labor with Tom Perez all come out and told us we need some minimum federal standards over these broken state work comp systems. Yet 3 years later, the left is silent, and I'm begging for help here as an injured worker in the state of Washington who has been abused and harmed. Yet I have our revolution not wanting to put this issue and Senator Sanders' solutions on the table. And I would like to know why the left basically is failing us at this time.
I don't know the answer to your question, Darren, and I'm sorry to hear about your circumstances. I hope you get through it. I'm sorry, I don't know.
So there you go. I mean, Tom don't know. He's kind of clueless. And even after I've educated Tom, he still doesn't want to come around and tell the truth here. So it's kind of frustrating. It's been 5 years, and he still doesn't want to help us get our workers' truth told and our minimum federal standards on the table. So we'll see what else I was going to bring up next to show you guys here. I wanted to bring up, the whole Washington books. Because I'll bring up some of the blogs have been the whole Washington folks. And one of them is, part of the problem is that they've been selling us this whole Washington, and it turns out these single payer plans, when you listen to, I don't know if I have this nurse up here still. Here she is. That's what I wanted to bring up next, is this nurse who breaks down and tells us a little bit about how single payer, and she's a union nurse, and she was a nurse, helped advocate for nurses for 30 years in people in the healthcare field. And she's speaking up and telling us how single payer plans are basically a waste of our advocates' time when they could be spent time fighting for federal issues like single national payer plan and stuff like maybe even for our injured workers' minimum federal standards. So this whole states' rights versus our federal rights is basically a Republican agenda and a play that we take out of the Republican playbook. So it's surprising that we have our Democrats using the same playbook with state player single payer plans as they don't want to get honest about our minimum federal standards for workers here in America. So this lady breaks it down really well, and folks should really hear what she has to say.
Unions to endorse national single payer HR 676, which was the bill at that time. We got over 600 unions, including, I think it was 44 state AFL-CIO federations in support. So that's some of the work that I'm happy to be doing. But I'm glad to be here and to talk about this really, really important issue, because we have to get it right in order to make it happen. In the time that I've been working on single payer, we've had 2 go-rounds where it seemed possible that we could get healthcare reform. The first one was in the early 90s, and that was during the Clinton administration. There was a strong single payer movement. We did tours across the country. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, we wrapped red tape around the Humana building and talked about the administrative waste. And we ended up with Hillary Clinton proposing a plan that kept the insurance industry in, turned everything over to HMOs. And we were told at that time that we have to do this because your single payer plan is not feasible, and this one is, and we're going to be able to do it. The reality was that they couldn't even get that to a vote, and that opportunity for healthcare reform slipped away. The second go-round was during the Obama administration in 2009, 2010. And Obama, who had promised in front of the Illinois AFL-CIO that he was supporting single payer, ended up, when he was running for president, not supporting single payer, and indeed supporting a plan in which he included all the insurance industry and all of the pharmaceutical companies, making everybody happy, and bringing us a plan called the Affordable Care Act, which I will refer to as the ACA. Each time we get close to health care, they impose something else in between, and they assert that the plan that they're imposing is going to do exactly what single payer would do, except it's feasible. And I contend that what they impose is always a plan that maintains the profits in healthcare. And indeed, it's the profits in our system, the profits in the insurance industry and the hospitals and nursing homes, the for-profit industry, that makes it not work, that makes it cost so much, and that produces the barriers that keep us from getting to the care. So that's the key thing we have to look at. If there's profit in it, it won't work. If there's profit in it, there will be barriers to care. And that's because there's a basic contradiction between a profit-based system with insurance industry that is, under US law, responsible for producing the biggest profit possible for its stockholders, and the interest of the patients who get denied care because that produces more profit. The insurance companies have put in all of the barriers to care, the co-pays, the deductibles, the pre-authorizations, the narrow networks. You go down the line. Everything in the way of getting care produces additional profit. So it's the profits that have to go. The profits in healthcare are diametrically opposed to the interests of the patients, the interests of the people, the interests of the nation. That's what single payer has to do. Remove the profit-making insurers, the profit-making nursing homes, hospitals, etc. So what we find in addition is that they tell us, well, you can't do single payer, but you can do little tiny steps that somehow will get there. In the end, we're going to take tiny, tiny steps and we're going to get to single payer. And the problem is none of those tiny steps help us in any way to advance the cause of getting to single payer. You may do something that helps some group of people, but you won't take out the for-profit system that is denying the care to the nation. And there are many of these incremental steps that are proposed. They propose expand Medicaid, patch the Affordable Care Act, improve Medicare by adding glasses, dental, etc. That might be a good thing, but it won't get us closer to single payer. And then there's the proposal for the public option, which everybody was for, and then it went away. But the reality is the public option or a Medicare buy-in doesn't do it for us either, because you will then have a public plan operating in a market-based system. And I think the closest thing that we have for showing what will happen if we do the public option is what we're experiencing now. We have the Medicare Advantage plans that are the private Medicare plans that Joe Namath is selling them. I'm sure you've heard it. And we have traditional Medicare. And we see that this public plan operating alongside of the private plans doesn't fare well. It ought to. Medicare has a 2% overhead, the private plans at about 15%. But it doesn't do well because there's no such thing as a level playing field. The insurance companies cherry pick. That means they get the healthiest people into their plans. They're more profitable. They lemon drop. They remove the patients who are the sickest, and they get thrown back onto the traditional Medicare, and they cheat. They upcode, which means that they pretend patients are sicker than they are. They increase the money that comes to them. We've overpaid Medicare Advantage in the last 12 years by $140 billion. We can't leave them in. The for-profit insurers have to go. We cannot incrementally get to this solution. And I think that the solution that is proposed by many people, we need to deal with as well, and that is that we should do it state by state. That is more difficult, I think, difficult for us to handle, but we need to know the truth about it. So let me lay out the case that those who advocate the state-by-state system make. They say it's too hard to win Medicare for all nationally. So let's do it a little bit at a time. Win one state, then everybody's going to see how well it works, and they're going to want it too. And so there'll be another state and another state. Eventually, we'll have the whole country. The nation will finally see it, and then they point to Canada and say Canada did it in Saskatchewan, in one province, and then others did it, and it became expanded to the whole country. Well, let me just start with Canada. Number one, when Canada did their Medicare for all, they did not have any national healthcare programs. Healthcare was a provincial responsibility. In our country, we have a multitude of national programs already in effect. 60 million are in Medicare, close to 80 million are in Medicaid. There's many millions more in the federal health insurance, in the federal health insurance plans, in others like the Indian Health Service and the VA, et cetera. So the basic premise of single payer is that you get the funding into one stream, you cut out the profits, you have a public funder in one stream, you simplify, and therefore you save the money in administrative costs and profits that allows you to use the money to make everybody's health care better and to extend it to those who don't have coverage. Well, if you can't get it into a stream because it's controlled at the federal level and the state doesn't have access to it, you can't do it in the state. And that's the problem. You can't get Medicare money into the state. There's no such thing. I mean, the people say, well, we'll just get a waiver. Well, there is a waiver that people can get for the money that's in the Affordable Care Act. That can go to the state. It's a section of the law that says that. But there's nothing that gives Medicare money to the state. And it's a problem that we shouldn't try to solve by busting up Medicare and turning it over to the states. So that's one of the big problems. That's why many of the people who advocate actually for state plans still say they can do quasi-single payer, or they put single payer in quotes. This is a pathway to single payer. Because the reality is, and many people working on it don't know, that you can't do bona fide single payer in one state. You can't get the funding into one stream. There are other problems that are involved as well. Another one is something called ERISA. And without getting into the woods on that, it's a federal law that says the Congress, the national government, has a right to make the laws that govern employer benefits and employer health care, et cetera. And states can't make laws about that. So those laws basically are blocking the ability of a state to control what employers do, even to tax in a way that they might be able to raise the money. So ERISA is a huge problem, in addition to the Medicare problem, for you to try to do a state plan. And then I think we should also look at what happens if the money gets allocated to the states, and if we could do it one state at a time. And let me just take you through what's happened with workers' compensation, which I'm familiar with because I've dealt with it over and over. The taxing system is different state to state. Workers' comp, while it's the states determine the taxing. And that has led us for states to fight each other over who's going to get employers to locate in their state. In trying to attract jobs, one state after another says, well, we have to lower the workers' comp because the tax rate's too high, and we get into a race to the bottom because we're in a fight because the rates are different in different states. I think if you look at not only workers' comp, but we can look at a couple of other things that are really, really important that we
So I'll stop it right there, folks. And she is awesome. It's nice to see somebody from the union and a nurse speaking up and telling us the truth about how single payer plans like whole Washington are basically leading us astray and having our literal sheep chase their tails or something we will never get. They know that. Even if we did get it, it would be shot down in the courts because they would take it down in the courts because Washington State it has a lot of issues. Number one, we don't have a state income tax, and that's part of our constitution. So our state constitution would have to change in order for any of this to work. Um, but beyond that, even if we got it on a silver platter and we got ours here in Washington State, it would be like saying, gee, we got ours, but to hell with everybody else. And it's not a stepping stone. That's a Republican out of the Republican playbook that we're going to go state by state and make change that we can't make change on the federal level. That and so it just doesn't work, and it never has. It's for so Democrats to be following this Our Revolution leaders like Tyler Vega, who told me to vote for their work comptroller Scott Staffney, who was a Republican work comptroller. There's something has to be questioned, and then I want to bring up this next video is about this whole Washington advocate here in Washington who was pushing whole Washington. I spent 25 minutes with this candidate on the phone. She was with Our Revolution, Bernie Kratz back then. And let's just let her tell a little bit of her story here. And it's this was part of the problem here is the whole Washington folks seem to be misled by a bunch of businessmen from the business community. And this was part of the reason why here.
Definitely going to have you back on before, primaries. Absolutely, for sure. I'm not asking, I'm telling. So we'll keep in touch. But thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching.
You right now. But I represent people like me, the silent majority. There is millions of people that feel just like I do. I'm breaking up with the left and Trump. You are, it's funny, you are what I thought, the leader that I thought Bernie Sanders was.
All right, this is our last speaker, one of the ones we've all been waiting for. Her name is Tamarine Borelli. She is an election integrity investigator who began as a board member with Election Justice USA in 2016, delivering Bernie Sanders a comprehensive statistical analysis of his stolen primary by the DNC. She currently is the director of Washington Election Integrity Coalition United, or the WEICU, and is committed to rooting out all forms of election integrity issues so that the voters of Washington can have transparent, secure, and publicly verified elections. Welcome, Tamarine Borelli.
Before I begin, I'd like to ask everybody to either join hands or touch somebody.
That was Tamarine Borelli.
Howdy, folks.
And as we go on here, she also speaks up with another little bit more. So let me see if I can fix it here. And she speaks at a rally.
National Bernie delegate, a board member of Election Justice USA, and coincidentally, the woman who is going to challenge Denny Eck next election cycle, Tamarine Borelli.
Hey, everybody. Is everyone feeling all right? Every single time that I have the privilege to stand at these steps,
the magnitude of what happens when I don't care if there's 5 people standing on these steps, the magnitude of what's created when 2 or more gather in the name of something that's right for the people. It's humbling, and I thank every one of you. Really, thank you for taking your time out on this beautiful day to come here and give your time and your energy to something that is such an immutable principle for all of us. We sit here for those who aren't here, that may not even realize that they should be. So give yourselves a heartfelt applause.
So I'm going to stop right there because it was about the same time that I was seeking help from Washington State Senator Marilyn Chase and her daughter, Karen Chase, who runs my Human Rights Commission and still does today, even though Senator Chase is retired. Her daughter still runs the Human Rights Commission and even our Edmonds School Council or something like that. These are people I asked for help for 5 years. And Senator Marilyn Chase did nothing but stroke me along and said, gee, we need to have investigations. We need to look into all this stuff, Darren. And when I got the letter from Senator Sanders, she closed all doors on me, did not want that truth told. Why? Because she wanted to push whole Washington along with folks like Senator Marco Ilias and Bob Halsagawa, it turns out, who I also spoke with on the phone for 45 minutes to Bob Halsagawa, trying to explain to him how we need minimum federal standards for our injured workers, and he didn't mention a word to me about how he was pushing whole Washington. And so it's a little frustrating to me that these Democrats that I reached out for seem to be teamed up with people like Tamburini Borelli, who were Republicans. And it turns out that Tyler Vega was telling me to vote for Scott Staffney, their work comp Republican lawyer, who did not agree with the minimum federal standards Senator Sanders and Patty Murray had told us we needed in the letter to Tom Perez. So I'll move on here and we'll keep going because we're explaining how these whole Washington people basically all of these people, as you go through here and find out who they're endorsing this whole Washington, this is whole Washington's page, their endorsements. Well, look at that. Is that Senator Marco Ilias is behind it. Imagine that. He who says work comp isn't broken in Washington State and everything is fine. Marco is wrong. Marco was weaned on the Edmonds City Chambers of Commerce. He held 2 jobs at one time, a state senator and a city job. He was double dipping. As I was trying to reach out to him, get help for my injured workers, minimum federal standards. It's just like he wanted for his LGBT community that he fought so hard for and said they need minimum federal standards to police them instead of states' rights policing these LGBTQ communities' rights. Us injured workers need that same respect back, bro, but he doesn't give it to us because he sides with the Alex state bizmen for state biz rates and a race to the bottom, or rather standing up and speaking for every worker across this nation and our minimum federal human rights. And then, of course, there's Derek Stanford. He's heard from me. I've sent stuff to him before. And, of course, Bob Halsagawa, who even took time to have his aide write me a letter and make excuses for not standing up and fighting for the minimum federal standards, and even had the audacity to tell me that we already have minimum federal oversight there and it's called OSHA. No, sir. That's not another National Work Comp Commission. Those aren't minimum standards. There aren't some laws written in stone that state lawmakers like you can't sell out to bizmen and medical establishment status quo whores who want to wage a war on us and will harm us in our health care and deny us. And in the state med board, sir, that you also protect, and the state med board protects you as you all wage war on us and our benefits as we go to get them, and nobody's policing the doctors who lie to deny. Let's talk about that, Bob Halsagawa. As you're pushing whole Washington and have the nerve to not want to help injured workers in America. You say you're with the union and you've been a union man, and your daughter sat around a table and works for the port somehow. The port systems is some kind of elected official now as well. And she brags about how she sat at your table talking about union issues, probably with Marilyn Chase while she was growing up. Well, while she was growing up, did she learn anything about the Republican playbook, how we put states' rights before other people's federal human rights? Because that's what you're doing with whole Washington, sir. You've been duped and misled by states' allied small business and our medical status quo nurses like Georgia Davenport, who wants to call me unhinged, rather than stand up and fight for nurses across this nation who are getting put through hell in broken statewide comp systems, as people like you all will tell us, gee, there's a process, and we're stepping up and telling you that that process is broken. So we'll just step through here, and we'll keep looking at these different state officials as we come across one that I come here, that Bob Hasagawa, as he wrote me the letter saying there's no minimum federal standards, but if you need a letter written, Darren, you should talk to your local representatives like, Mike Sells, who's dissed you for 5 years, or Rick Larson, who's ignored you for 5 years as a U.S. lawmaker, and Emily Wicks, who seems to want to not watch the videos. CMAR Medical Behavioral Health, who I go for mental health treatment for 6 years over this, court ordered, by the way, most of it, criminally court ordered, is tied in with Rick Larson, and none of them want to get honest, as they're also tied in with Ortiz Self, as another state lawmaker, to spin a narrative against injured workers and use immigrants on Latino Legislative Day in 2018 to spin a narrative and saying Washington State wasn't harming or failing its injured workers, everything was fine, and that turned out to be a lie. So, anyways, Senator State Representative Bob Hasagawa tells me I'm supposed to contact Emily Wicks. So I do. I contact her and one of her aides, that I'm not going to use her name because she has a restraining order on me. Instead of watching the videos, they snubbed me and were arrogant and refused to listen to me. And in the restraining order that her legislative aide, Emily Wicks' legislative aide, who later on in the story becomes my city council member, that was one of the reasons I was reaching out to her, because my mental health therapist said to reach out to these local people in these burning crafts for help, to find out that they all don't want to help and don't want you to be heard. And not only that, they are willing to jail you, to silence you, if you are an opponent to whole Washington. And I'm not an opponent to whole Washington. Whole Washington has just been a ruse by Republican businessmen to lead our Democrat sheep astray as we push a businessman's narrative instead of a workers' narrative, when even our unions and Snohomish Democrats are signing off on all this. This is both the left and the right, waging war on men and women on the bottom, as both sides point fingers at the other. As some of my injured workers friends say, well, you got to move to a blue state. I live in a blue state, and this is happening. So it's not appropriate when Emily Wicks will not want to hear from me and write in the charging documents they weren't criminal, I guess they were civil, restraining order that her aide, legislative liaison aide, pressed upon me, stating that Emily Wicks and her office refused to listen to the videos that I had also shared, along with the yelling and screaming that I sent to them, verbiage, which none of it was threatening. So that's why the police said it had to be this other type of harassment instead of criminal, which they could have charged me for. Ended up, I was only yelling and screaming because they weren't hearing me, and they said, well, we refuse to hear Darren Ponceau, because Fields is what it was at the time, because I had to use a different, my old name from when I was a child. So anyways, I have two names, Ponceau and Fields. But anyways, they said that they would not listen to the video CMAR Mental Health told me to make, so lawmakers like Emily Wicks would hear what was happening to me and others. They refused to listen to those videos. So you don't want to hear from me because I had been harassing to others in the past. So yes, I have been charged with harassment in the past because I was being harassed because people weren't hearing me, nor listening to me, nor representing me or injured workers in our human rights in America today, like Emily Wicks, who would rather jail me than get honest about a war on America's injured workers and mental federal standards, because she's too busy selling whole Washington and single payer, which seems to be a Republican agenda more than it is in a Democrat one. We fight for single payer on a federal level. We fight for Medicare for all. That's for everybody. Whole Washington, even if we had it on a silver platter, doesn't help my brother in Alabama. That's not for all. This step-by-step incrementalism is a Republican narrative. And I need it to be out of my Democrat Party, and I need Baba House of Wawa to speak up for injured workers and Marco Illis and definitely Emily Wicks. You need to pull your head out of that businessman and the nurses at Providence buck long enough to represent the humans in your community and the workers in this nation who need some minimum federal standards on the table like Senator Sanders told us we need. And the United States Congressional Research Service has told us we need it, and workers' advocates have told us we needed that since, 1972. So anyways, we'll go down here. Frank Chop, he's another state lawmaker that doesn't do a thing for us. This guy here, Gary Pollitt, I have also talked to him. I made a video about him as well because he works at Hanford where the Bob, our Attorney General, Bob, I can't remember his name, Ferguson, will go against the federal government and stand up for injured workers at Hanford. But what you, the rest of the time, it's Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General, State Attorney General, injured workers fight against. But when I asked Gary Pollitt to speak up and stand up for our minimum federal standards for injured workers, he didn't want to. He told me I couldn't come up with any solutions or resolution. Yet when I come up with a resolution and a solution, him and Patty Murray refuse to address it. So does Senator Sanders at this point. This is egregious when we're told in 2015 we have a solution to stopping a class war on some of you humans in your community, yet none of these people will stand up. Like Jason Kalk here, who in around 2015, 2016 was my local PCO precinct captain, who I thought, well, things were different. He said, things are different now. I'm with the Democrats here, and I'm in charge of your local Democrats, and things will be different. I'll go get you some help. And he went to some meeting, then he come back and said, well, all I can get you is a state ombudsman. I can't get your other issue on the table. And I'm going, what do you mean? You got a letter from Sanders here. But no, all we can fight for is a state ombudsman, which was the same thing the entrenched Democrat Mike Sells had already told me the year before. But he told me he couldn't get it because the Republicans had control back then. But yet when we got control of both chambers, our Democrats, they still wouldn't put that on the table for us. And another thing they said they would put on the table for us was they might be able to get us a state ombudsman. But they never put that on the table either, because some of us have access to a state ombudsman for private insurers here in the state of Washington, where the other workers don't have that same access to that legal advocacy. And therefore, it makes it unconstitutional under both the state and federal constitutions for injured workers in the state of Washington. But Jason Cole don't want to bring that up or talk about it, or the minimum federal standards, or the letter from Senator Sanders. I have begged of this gentleman here to speak up for the humans in his community and the workers in our community. As I have told him, my father-in-law was a Mexican immigrant, worked to death at Walmart by the state of Washington and the Sedgwick Insurance Company, yet he doesn't want to get honest about that and share that with the world so that we can put the minimum federal standards on the table so that people like my father, who has also went through work comp hell when I was a child, my father-in-law worked to death as an adult, and myself put through 8 years of work comp hell. Rather than people just giving us our bandage jobs, the HMO doctors care gauge to start with here in the state of Washington, and that's where the holdup is at, young Jason Call. We're not policing the doctors. Our med board is not policing the doctors, as they're used to deny us our work comp and even SSDI benefits. So it's egregious to when I have a man like this says he's going to be different than Rick Larson, who I have Representative Rick Larson. He's going to be different. As Jason Call is running for U.S. office, he tells me his priorities are Medicare for all, Darren, and whole Washington, not your injured workers issue. So his priorities are Medicare for all, fine. But his other priority is a state initiative, which is a Republican-led initiative at this point, a businessman-led initiative, and a state fix. And he's telling the injured workers of America he can't address our federal issue because he's more concerned about bringing attention to a state fix instead of addressing our federal issues. He's going to go on, instead of helping me call out Representative entrenched Democrat Rick Larson on our federal human rights issue. I call foul. And we move on down, and here we go. I don't know, there's so many of them here. But all of these people are people I've tried to reach out to get help from in my Democratic apparatus after I got the letter from Senator Sanders. And none of them would step up to help us. I thought there might be somebody else on here I recognize. Oh, here we go. Speaker Marilyn Chase, Senator we had Washington State Senator Marilyn Chase, I told you about a while ago, who stroked me along as I tried to get help from her and was telling her about what was going on. And we got Senator Sanders' letter, and she just closed the doors on me, and then she ended up quitting herself. But her daughter, Karen Chase, also spoke to me on Facebook and stroked me as well. But part of the reason she was stroking me is because she runs our local Snohomish County Human Rights Commission, who I have begged for help from, and I have a phone call with an hour of me begging for help from those people, and they have refused to help as they chase this seems to be bizman agenda rather than standing up and speaking up for workers here in America and in Snohomish County. These are the blocks. These are the biz blocks. I can't blame the Alec biz right, which I despise. Yet, when my own liberal left and people like Karen Chase can't get honest as a war is waged upon members of their community, and a man like me has had to seek mental health services and been sent to jail several times over this issue, that none of them, not even CMOC, mental health, wants to get honest about because their admin, Claudia Alegre, which is a legislative assistant for CMAR, is in bed with people like Karen Chase and Rick Larson and Ortiz Self. She sides with the state lawmakers and their agenda to get this whole bizman's agenda on the table rather than the patient at CMAR. And I have made a complaint with the Med Board, which they will not, of course, they will say they've done no harm, just like they always do. Anyways, those are just some of the people. Oh, yeah, here's Swan, Kashmir Swan. She's endorsed it since 2015 as well. I have begged for her to speak up some minimum federal standards for injured workers. She has refused to, yet she will definitely talk about every other federal issue under the sun. Her advocates will say, well, she's just a city council member. She can't talk about your issue, Darren. No, she poses, and my Democratic Party posts her out there as being the socialist voice for America's laborers here in America. Yet this labor voice can't stand up and tell the truth. As Senator Sanders told us in 2015, there was something wrong with that, Miss Microsoft. Hint, hint. Tammy Morales, I've tried to get you to help as well. This are the people who have turned their backs on us. Teresa Musquat, she also knew about all this. All these people have been contacted by me trying to get help. And instead would, like Jason Call did, label me unhinged instead of putting our issues on the table for us. How are we supposed to get the truth told in America when we're told that, oh, here's another one. Courtney Love, who runs the vice chair for Our Revolution. She's with Tyler Vega back then. He was the main chair of it back then. She too was calling me unhinged and telling me I was trying to harm their candidates. No, I was trying to get a truth told young Courtney Love that you and your friend Tyler Vega would want to cover up and then tell me to vote for Republican work comp lawyer Scott Stafford. There's something wrong with that whole Washington. You're not good nurses. You're bad nurses and bad human beings. You have harmed my mental health for 5 years now, and I want an apology and someone to say I'm sorry. If you're going to call me unhinged, you long-run red berets, then you need to learn to say you are sorry to the humans you are harming. Senator Marilyn Chase, right here. She's a big one. This lady here, too, has also debated me on Facebook and told people not to listen to me. Mr. Firestone, who acts like he's the smart wonk and the intelligent man. This intelligent man here, Mr. Firestone, as he sells MMT, which I know nothing about. But what I do know, Sora, is you know nothing about human beings and what injured workers need. You are a distraction. You are a bizman distraction. You are leading my sheep astray as you act like the superior intellectual snob that you are when you don't stand up for a worker as he asks you for help. You and Tom Hartman are, I can't say the word, but you are our Democratic Party. Our fellow Americans injured workers, and it is egregious. And I'm calling foul on people like Senator Marilyn Chase. And here's the kicker, folks. This is a big one, and why I say towards the last. This person here is called Tracy Carlos. Let's put her up right there. She's the chair of Thurston County Queer Democrats. Oh, I didn't know that part. But anyways, good to know. The LBG community doesn't want to stand up for America's injured workers' minimum federal rights. I have begged for this lady to help, as she was a precinct captain in one of the other in Thurston County. Now she's a vice chair of it or something like that. But here's the more bigger point. She went out in my progressive community as I was seeking help with Senator Sanders' letter. She was going around telling people not to hear me, that she works at the Labor and Industries, Washington State Labor and Industries, and she should know that it's not broken and everything was fine, just like Marco Elias was talking about. I'm sorry. When employees, state employees like Tracy Carlos are out selling whole Washington, yet I'm getting sent to therapists and jails because I'm trying to get this truth told, yet she is a state employee for LNI or was in the past. And I don't know if she still is today, but when I was seeking help a couple years back here, she was still working for the Washington State Labor and Industries, as she was also working for the Democratic Party, telling them not to hear a victim and a patient. And so I was standing up for the minimum federal standards that Senator Sanders said we need, and how I had proof of harm to me and my care, my father-in-law's care, and other injured workers' care, yet people like her were saying LNI is fine and nothing is broken. Whole Washington, our revolution, Bernie Kratz, have stepped on my dick for 5 years as I've tried to get this truth told. So now I am going to switch back on over here, and I think we'll play this little thing here a little bit too. This is where Senator Sanders was two-faced with Amazon workers.
I wanted to show y'all that I'm at Amazon parking lot, still living in my car. And here is my bed, if you can see it. I just can't believe this is my life now. I just can't believe it. I mean, I live in my car at my job. Who does that? Who does that? I work for the world's richest man, and I live in my car. I was still, holding out hope that I would get enough money from my GoFundMe page to pay all of my rent. Well, I didn't accumulate enough money. This is my eviction letter. So now I'm living out of my car. This is the life of an Amazon employee who works 40 hours a week at $13.25 an hour.
I'm very proud of our working conditions.
I have $1 in my purse, and I have $5.46 on my new bank card. I have no food, and I have no gas. And I'm a full-time Amazon employee. I've sold all my jewelry. I've pawned all my guns that I used to have. I have nothing of evidentiary value. As an Amazon employee, I should not have to struggle like this.
This is not 5 people. This is what is going on all over this country. These are the stories of tens and tens of millions of Americans.
I'm at a loss for words that a company, $1 trillion company, a man that has a ballroom in his home, somebody that has 2, 3, 4 mansions. Look what I'm moving out of. See this?
From January 1st through May 1st of this year, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, saw his wealth increase by $275 million every single day.
The only way that I can see to deploy this much financial resource is by converting my Amazon winnings into space travel.
He has so much money. And instead of giving that to his workers, he's building a rocket ship. This is real life. And this is how real life people live. We don't live on a high horse up in a mansion somewhere, eating steaks every night or eating out. So while Jeff Bezos is enjoying his steak every night, I want him to know personally what I'm gonna be eating for supper tonight. Crackers and cheese? Sounds good to me. That, my friends, is corporate America.
As we hear these stories, it speaks to the incredible culture of greed in this country. It is not a culture where people are respected, who are part of a team, and we have to ask ourselves a very fundamental question as to whether or not that is the kind of country and the kind of economic culture that we are comfortable with.
When we are criticized, there's a simple process that you need to go through, which is first you look yourself in the mirror and decide, is your critic right?
I want y'all to see what this goddamn company has done to me.
Do you agree?
It's broken me.
Are we doing something wrong?
I mean, mentally and physically, it's broken me.
And let's listen to this one real quick, too, while we're at it.
You see this black box right here?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to show you something right now. Some people are concerned that they might have to.
Google, of course, is one of several big tech monopolies, and not the only one worth worrying about. Amazon, if you can believe it, an even larger company than Google, despite being worth $1 trillion. Many of its 500,000 employees live in poverty. Shannon Allen is one of them. She's an Amazon employee who says she's been living out of her car, and she joins us tonight. Shannon, thanks very much for coming on. How can you work for the richest man in the world and live out of your car? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, what happened was when I first got injured, I went on medical leave 3 weeks after my injury, and the checks were delayed coming in. And then after the checks started coming in, they hurried up through my process of me being injured and sent me back to work early. So then that took some time to work and get some hours in to where I got a paycheck from Amazon again. And when I was re-injured, I went back out on medical leave in January.
And just to be clear, you were injured on the job, you say, and then you wound up living in your car.
And then let's listen to a little bit of this. There's her on Tucker Carlson.
My name is Shannon Allen, and I am an injured, homeless Amazon employee. If it was not for the World Socialist website, my story would have never gotten out there. This is my eviction letter. Amazon Fulfillment Center right here. It's my new home. And got my pillow and blanket and stuff in the back. Recently, Bernie Sanders took a number of my videos from YouTube that I had posted and spliced them together with clips from his speeches and used my situation to boost his own political profile. Let me clarify, I am not a Bernie Sanders supporter. He is just another Democratic Party politician whose job is to keep workers like me chained to a two-party system. The Teamsters also wanted to use my story to help boost their image, and I told them no, because the problems me and my fellow workers face won't be solved by giving dues money to unions that are all in cahoots with the corporations. What we need is a socialist program. I am calling for the building of a rank and file committee run.
And that's what I'm going to stop right there. She wanted her story to basically be used for rank and file committee. Rank and file committees at Amazon. And that's her solution to helping all the injured workers in America. And that's a Republican solution. That's not going to work as well. Because how is helping workers at one plant going to make it help all the rest of us at all the other plants? That's not the solution, and it's a distraction from the minimum federal solution we need. So Shannon Allen wanted her injured workers group and the World Socialists to use it to push anti-union rank and file committees at Amazon, whereas Senator Sanders wanted to use the injured workers, Amazon workers homeless group to push 15 an hour, and not say any word about the minimum federal standards he had told us in 2015 we need that would have stopped the war on people like Shannon Allen and myself. So I don't know what to say anymore. This is kind of frustrating to me that for 5 years I have tried to get this truth that Senator Sanders told us, that in 2020 the United States Congressional Research Service also came out, a think tank of smart folks from the left and the right, from our senators, got together and told us that we also need these minimum federal standards. So it's not a Senator Sanders solution. This is a bipartisan solution that injured workers have cried for since 1972, when Richard Nixon, a Republican president, had the last National Work Comp Commission that the suggestions from that commission were never implemented into law. They were just suggestions. What us injured workers would like, and what Sanders told us needs to be done, and Patty Murray and Tom Perez in 2015, and also these United States Congressional Research Service, and longtime injured workers have told us that we need these minimum federal standards to stop this war on us. And so it's frustrating as I have tried to get a federal fix for the injured workers of America for our minimum federal human rights, the same way Washington State Senator Marco Elias will speak up for federal human rights for the LGBT community, which I'm all for. Bravo, as a Democrat and a liberal. But when my own liberals for 5 years now, like Tyler Vega and Jason Call, will call me unhinged rather than help me put our issue on the table, our federal issue, as they're selling the bizman's state whole Washington issue, as it has turned out to be, is for the bizman, not for the workers, and not for all the nation's workers or all the nation's humans. You can't call it for all when it's for only people in one state. It's not a stepping stone. There's only 26 states that actually have the ability to have an INR process, initiative and referendum. So at the very most, you could only do it 26 states do it one by one that way. And that's never going to happen. And how long would that take? How much longer the injured workers got to be told to wait on our minimum federal standards? We've been told since 1972. Then once again, in 2010, Senator Baca from California tried to put the minimum federal standards back on the table again, but when the Republicans had some control so that they would lose. It seems like an attempt from both sides to not want to get the truth told and minimum federal standards on the table for workers in America today. Basic minimum federal human rights so that a man doesn't get an arm $35,000 for an arm compensated in one state and $750,000 in another state. Or how about gender bias, my liberal ladies and gentlemen? Gender bias is really big. It's a 10% difference in what I will get paid and compensated if I'm injured on a job from that of my female counterparts. But, you know, we're going to fix that state by state the way we fix everything else state by state, and we haven't. Whether it's abortion rights, whether it's marijuana rights, whether it's gun rights, you name it on down the line. This state by state is not working. We need some minimum federal laws in this land so that people don't use our state laws, businessmen, to work against our federal human rights of the humans. And when it's my Democrats that seem to be playing into this narrative that we can't get honest about your issue because it will sink our state issue. When you tell a worker who's been hurt and harmed and a patient in America, he's coming to you and you're saying you're running for public office. I don't care if it's fucking for the ditch digger or the county dog walker, whatever it is you're applying for. I come to you as a human being and told you I was hurt and harmed, and so are others, and you are telling me to go away with my issue, that you have some other state rights issue when my issue is a federal human rights issue. There's something wrong with that. And I'm calling foul on Jason Call and Representative Rick Larson when neither one of you can step up to the plate here. And Senator Patty Murray, where is your voice? And Senator Sanders, you've been kind of silent as you used Amazon workers like Shannon Allen to push 15 an hour without backing me up and speaking up so that people like young Jason Call can call me unhinged as he pushes a state fix when we need a federal fix. You had your opportunity, Senator Sanders in Vermont. Don't keep playing games with my workers, sir. You and President Biden need to step up here. Have a good day. Over and out. For my conservative friends, work comp is an equal opportunity oppressor. It don't care what party you are from. And it is your side and the bizmen, if you will look into that have waged this state war on a state by state by state and break these state laws against us. That's why we need some minimum federal standards so our doctors aren't used as tools of shield and then the state med board protect that shit. Injured workers, new ones. Great, you've just gotten with us. And things are going great for you. That's awesome. But what we need to talk about is for the people that their cases didn't go well. Those ones who are living in boxes on the street like Shannon Allen. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. This is just egregious. When people are being hurt and harmed. And we've given a solution Yet we've been told by our own Democrats we can't put that solution on the table because we're all in bed with alec-based Republicans on the state level, and we can't help you human beings on a federal level. At the end of the day, all my Washington state Democrats are Joe Manchins. Have a good day.